A lot of you guys are unsubscribed, so you might miss my videos. If you're even remotely interested, ring the bell to enable notifications. I upload a smaller number of longer videos, so your feed won't be spammed. Also, please like the video if you enjoy it really makes my day. Into the Breach is a turn-based tactics puzzle indie roguelike sci-fi strategy game that was released in 2018 by Subset Games, the developers of Faster Than Light. I got pretty addicted to this game immediately, and I've played a total of 53 hours so far. That doesn't sound like that much, but this isn't your typical laid-back roguelike with which to pass the time. So, the premise, let's do a quick lightning round. On each run, you travel back in time from the previous one in order to save the Earth from Vec, which are giant bugs. You can choose any squad out of the 9 available or create a custom or even random one. Each contains 3 mechs that all have different abilities. You have 4 islands to visit before you can do the final mission, with each of them containing many battles with various side objectives, such as kill 7 enemies or protect the special building. You get stars for completing them, with which you can purchase skills and more power grids. You lose 1 each time a building is destroyed, and you can have 7 of them. Lose all of them and the game is over. You can also buy power cores, which upgrade your move distance and health or enable you to equip and upgrade abilities. Characters offer different stats and special talents and can be assigned to mechs. They die forever if the mech dies in battle, which leaves it to be controlled by a simple AI with no benefits. This can actually offer tons of freedom when it comes to tactics, being able to expand mechs with no real consequence. Finally, combat starts with you getting to position your mechs on the top side of the 8x8 map. Then the enemies move and telegraph their attacks, much like in Slay the Spire. You then get to move and attack once with each mech, desperately trying to push, kill or block the attacks. After ending your turn, they attack, move and telegraph again. And the cycle continues for 5 enemy turns altogether. We have many aspects such as smoke that cancels attacks, acid that doubles damage, water and lava that insta-kill ground enemies, forests that light on fire, enemies that buff their allies, and so on. Not to mention the great number of buildings and conditions that are unique to objectives. If I had to describe Into the Breach with one sentence, however, it would be the puzzle part of chess for people who want to play chess but for one reason or another cannot play chess. One of these reasons can be accessibility. Chess is one of the easiest games to learn the rules of. You only have to memorize 6 different movement patterns after all. However, it's no secret that actually playing the game can be rather intimidating for most people. Whether that's because of the sheer complexity of its tactics and strategy or due to the stress of facing an actual person one-on-one is a topic for another time. Into the Breach, on the other hand, can be a little harder to learn since you have different characters, classes, passive and active abilities, many various enemies, terrain, grids, reputation. There's so much to unpack here, but not really. It only takes a couple of hours to make sense of how everything works. It's all incredibly intuitive. And when it comes to playing the game, there are no real hurdles. You're obviously playing against the computer and it's not gonna judge you. You're free to think everything through as much as you want, and the game will very strongly incentivize you to do so. That's because you can lose based on just a couple of small errors. That moment when I'm more than 30 minutes deep into a run is probably the most I'm ever invested into using my brain in anything tactical. The stakes are unbelievably high. You will never ever find yourself just speedrunning battles. The game is also not only one of the few ones that actually makes you use your brain, but also undoubtedly the one which makes you do it the most. Of those that I have played, of course. I've sat there pondering for more than 5 or 10 minutes on a single turn. That one where it seems damn impossible to avoid casualties, but it's impossibly surprising just how often you can, as long as you keep thinking. Also, 5 minutes per turn doesn't sound like that much, but you get 4 turns in each battle, and there are 5 battles on each island, and there are 4 islands, you get the point. Secondly, beating the game isn't really that hard on normal, and I imagine way less on easy, so there's one less for intimidation. It took me no more than 5 runs to secure a victory, though I will admit it was definitely a close one. I did visit all 4 islands however, which I later realized is just very stupid if you want to actually win. At the final island in particular, I find myself losing out more often than not, and if I don't, it isn't even worth the risk. 3 islands are always the sweet spot for me. 2 words that I've mentioned a couple of times now are tactics and strategy. Tactics can be simply described as the short-term problem-solving part of the equation, taking a long look at all the pieces on the board and figuring out how best to minimize the damage right now. That queen is threatening my piece, I will position my queen diagonally with that piece. Problem solved. That Vec is about to attack my building, I will push it sideways and make it attack its own. Problem solved. It's very similar to a puzzle, which means the answer is always objective. Well, sometimes we have two answers, either save the pilot or save the building, but you get what I mean. The way you get to either of them is very much deterministic. Strategy, on the other hand, is the complete opposite. It's the long-term aspect and is more on the subjective side. Where can I best position my mechs? Should I block enemy spawns now or later? What skills should I get and or upgrade? What character should I get? The answers to these questions are way more up for debate. And while strategy may not seem as prevalent at first, since you'll be spending 95% of your time in tactical combat, it doesn't mean it isn't just as crucial. After all, no one can tactics their way through a puzzling situation if they chose the wrong tools early on, and it doesn't matter whether you completed every side objective or not if you don't know what to spend your precious stars on at the end. The more you play, the more you'll find yourself thinking just as hard about strategy as you do about tactics. Earlier, I said that you'll quickly figure out how everything works, and that's mostly pertaining to UI and the basic combat mechanics. When it comes to unique situations, it somehow keeps throwing new ones at you that you don't know the answer to even 40 hours in. Like, if I use Vice Fist to throw an enemy into acid, will it apply the acid first and then deal double damage? Yes. Can buildings such as factories or defense labs resist damage? Yes. Does water wash away acid? No. Does healing in a burning tile extinguish it? Yes, actually, what? Many of these questions don't come up often unless you start playing with a new squad, the hazardous mechs when it comes to acid for example. Another aspect of replayability is choosing which islands to visit first. Whether you're going for 2, 3 or 4, I don't actually think there's much point in going with any other progression than Old Earth, then Desert, then Ice and finally Acid. I thought I might have attached my own experience to it since you always have to do it in that way the first time, and I also kept doing it after I unlocked them all anyway, but no! After taking a long look at all the possible missions and conditions, this would be my ranking. And I would expect most people to actually think the same. I've obviously left out all the objectives that appear in every island. As you can see, the challenge gradually increases, except with the first two, where it's kind of debatable. You do have to visit at least 2 islands though, so it doesn't matter either way. Obviously, you can choose to visit the Acid Island first because you want more challenge, but for 99% of people that'll be after getting each medal and achievement on every squad, since there's nothing more to strive for but self-made challenges. So I guess you could say the island choosing aspect of replayability starts then, more than 150 hours in. But before that, I don't believe there's much of it. There's also the fact that every single 8x8 layout in the game is handmade. With such a game, I believe going through the trouble of designing randomly generated layouts would be more trouble than what it's worth. Imagine getting that one layout that's just impossible to solve. The developers likely wouldn't even be able to avoid that, except if they limited the randomness greatly, at which point they might as well just take the time to make the various handmade maps instead. They did do that, but I still encountered a completely unfair layout once. This one. It's basically an impossible one to solve, unless you can shield or freeze the building, which isn't most of the time really. The soundtrack in this game is also great. Weirdly enough, the combat themes remind me of Divinity Original Sin 2 of all things. It's great thinking music, but some of them genuinely bang too much. I found myself spacing out and just jamming to the song way too often. I'll leave it up to you on whether that's a good thing or not. I also appreciate how abstract the world building is. We just get mentions of events, speak with characters and get to hear some context from them about what's going on. It leaves you to fill in the blanks, and I like that a game which isn't about the story doesn't have one just for the sake of it. I do want to know more about it, but I think that would actually ruin it. The real intriguing part of it is the mystery. I'd say they do stray away from pushing it in your face a little too much though. The whole time travel concept can be easily ignored by the player and even missed by some. That's unfortunate since the morality of it and how dark it is cool to think about. Alec Meir of Rock Paper Shotgun has a great article about that exact matter of Into the Breach, and I'll leave a link in the description. I am disturbed by the idea of timelines much like him, since the worlds you fail to save continue existing and get ravaged by the Vec after you've already left, along with the 2 allies you left behind. I also like his exploration of the morality of creating different realities each time you warp, and thus essentially gambling with millions of lives. Even if you're extremely good at it and succeed 90% of the time, does that make up for the 10% you left to die? In other words, is it moral to give birth to 9 people and give them not even amazing, just good lives, but also have to leave one of them to die? I would say no, but anyway, I don't believe it's what actually happens in the game, due to the fact that one of the characters has a line that states something something after we have saved all the timelines. It very much makes it clear that they already exist and don't work like diverging world lines. On a lighter note, I also love how you can almost never get infinitely overpowered like you can in The Binding of Isaac or Slay the Spire or many other roguelikes really. In those games, you can get a certain build and be absolutely sure that no matter what comes your way, you will completely destroy it. Well, not here. The final island is always nerve-wracking, obviously sometimes less than others, but never not at all. And that doesn't mean you don't get the glorious satisfaction of a perfect roguelike run that we all know and love, one where you don't want it to ever end and simply wish to go on massacring foes forever. You do get that, but it always comes with a great sense of dread that something might go wrong. An impossible situation might appear out of nowhere and take half of your grit power. Moreover, you're only on the 4th island. What if it happens again on the 5th one and you just lose? And maybe it doesn't happen, maybe you just have slightly bad luck, or normal luck, or even good luck. But it could have happened. In other words, this game somehow always makes you feel as if increasing the difficulty just a little bit would completely break everything, including your squad. I can't quite put my finger on how it's so well balanced, but it just is. One quality of life feature that stood out to me is always being able to undo moves. A lot of times an attack will be pointing at a shielded target and you can't remember off the top of your head how much that particular enemy deals, so you just move there with a mech and check. Or perhaps you simply misclicked and wish to undo the move. There's also the fact that the game is programmed to not have all the enemies attack if lots of them are on the screen, so as to give you some leeway, and less will spawn as well, which is great. And finally, the most important discussion we can have in this game is the case of perfect information. Does Into the Breach have that? Well, what even is it? A game of perfect information is one where the player knows just as much going into the game as they do going out. One example would be chess. That's only pertaining to information in relation to the fact that you can view all the pieces on the board, and not when it comes to what your opponent is thinking, obviously. So, is Into the Breach a game of perfect information? I would say yes. Two examples that come to mind immediately which could contradict that very statement are what enemies spawn and where they spawn. When you drop off your mechs, the enemies move, then an array of emerging mech appear, showing where the next are going to arrive. Depending on where your mechs are positioned, you might not be able to, say, push a one-health mech onto an emerging one and have it die, since you don't know how to position properly before seeing they would appear. Moreover, afterwards you don't know how to position your mechs either, since you don't know what type of mech would appear. However, those aspects of gameplay are, you could say, outside of each little combat section, that would be your turn, which is what I would argue should be examined for perfect information. When you strip everything down, these single turns of the game are the puzzle part of it, the tactics part. It really is what 90% of the combat is about. But anyway, it does live up to what I said. No turn will ever turn out different than what you think it will, being able to see everything on the battlefield in the beginning. There is one exception, however. If an enemy strikes a building, it has a chance of resisting damage. But this example of randomness is just something you can hope to save your ass. If it doesn't happen, you usually go, yeah, that was expected, right? It's not the type of randomness that can just screw you over. Subset games justify using it so as to not have the player feel as bad when they realize they just lost. Without it, you would either have to end your turn knowing that you are about to die, or literally have the game say checkmate to you. But with it, there is always a slim chance that you might survive. That was said by the company's co-founder Matthew Davies in a great 1-hour long speech about the making of Into the Breach that you should definitely watch. I'll leave that in the description too. When it comes to the whole battle, not just single turns, and also the entire run overall, it's clearly quite random. Island objectives and conditions, bosses, time pods and available skills, these things are all based on RNG. Even if you disagree with my previous characterization of what should be analyzed for perfect information, you have to admit that Into the Breach is the perfectest information it can be. Could the developers somehow manage to show absolutely everything that will happen in the whole run before it doesn't present that information to you clearly? Probably not. Though, maybe? But would you even want to play the game at that point? I bet not. The less randomness there is, the simpler the game becomes, and this game is perfectly simple as is. And having lots of randomness isn't a bad thing either. It can be a great thing in fact, like in Divinity Original Sin 2. A lot of that game's fun revolves purely around it, much more so when you're playing with other people since you hype each other up when you get insane crits, but it's fun either way nonetheless. That's the way I see it, though generally a game having less randomness is harder to make and harder to make fun, and also seems to stick with me way longer in the long run. And I believe there aren't many games that this is more true about than Into the Breach. But would I say this game is yeah, actually. Thank you for watching this shorter than usual video. Me writing it in no way means that I'm done with the game or have seen everything there is to see in it. In fact, I've only completed the Rift Walker, Zenith God and Hazardous Mech so far. I haven't even unlocked the Secret Squad, but I don't think I'll change my mind on any of the particular things I said in this video. The next game I'm really looking forward to critiquing is Disco Elysium, which I've already played by the way. I'll do it as soon as the final cut comes out, unless I'm working on something particular at the moment. That something might be two of my favorite games ever, Divinity Original Sin 2 or Vampire the Masquerade Bloodlines, or FTL, which I actually haven't played yet somehow. As always, subscribe if you like this type of content and want to see more of it. Thanks for sticking around, and I'll see you in the next video.